In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful, welcome to another session of lessons from my mother. We are on lesson number 52. Still a long way to go, I would say, probably till the end of this year, if not slightly even farther ahead. Hopefully, we will have all this compiled by that time. Um, then again, there are also some lessons which have some overlap, so perhaps I might do certain themes in the book. Like these are five major themes, and in each theme, there may be some smaller individual lessons. Perhaps that is how the book will be arranged. Um, and I also have to interview a few more of my friends in Montreal, in England, in Pakistan, in Turkey, in the Emirates, in America. There's quite a lovely spread that's across the world, and I'd love to interview them very soon. So today's lesson is about fighting in the bedroom. Now, what does that even mean? Anybody or everybody who's married has a partner, has a spouse who they share a bedroom with, and who also has experience living in um, a larger family unit. So, like the majority of the world, barring the Western 12%, a large portion of the world still lives in the parental home and it's passed on generation to generation. Don't believe in all this urbanization crap that we see on social media. Even in America, there's huge sections of the United States, which politically we call Middle America, where children are still living in the parents' house and they're living together even when they're older. It's a very cosmopolitan, metropolitan, San Fran, LA, New York, Boston type of feeling where you say, oh, I want to live alone, I want to live here, I want to live there. Even in Middle America, that's not the case. You see that more in Europe. You do see that in Europe. In England, you see that all the time. And I would attribute that partially to the social system, but also partially to the size of houses. In England, houses are tiny, absolutely tiny. So I would attribute it to that too. But in the rest of the world, I've seen it in Turkey, I've seen it in the Emirates, I've seen it in Saudi, I've seen it in China, Pakistan, and by extension, India, Bangladesh. So that's easily more than 50-60% of the world. I haven't visited South America or Africa, but I'm familiar with their cultures, particularly through my friends. And what I've gathered is that, barring the Western nation states, living in the extended family home is still very much the norm. And I'm very happy that that is the case, because I don't support the crumbling of the family, which leads to the crumbling of community and society and nation state. I don't support that. And I'm happy to debate that with most people. So living in that unit, let me give you an example. For example, I have three other brothers, and with myself, we have four boys. Let's assume all of us are married. And the parental house in Pakistan or even in England would be large enough to hold five different couples, one for my parents and four for the other sons, for all the sons and their wives. And then you have children, and then you want to expand it a bit further, and so on and so forth. So you have to revise it. But initially, the family home is designed as such. If we can hold you in space, we will. Living in that sort of structure or space means that there's going to be a lot of overlap. See, one thing you can't really find in these cultures is long-term social isolation. Now, you can make the point that you can be lonely even if you're not alone. That's a whole different argument. I mean, social isolation. Like, I know people here in Canada, including myself, who during the pandemic had absolutely no human contact. Absolutely none. No human contact. And they were locked inside their apartment for months. And there's other people even today who go to work or come back or just work remotely. They have absolutely no human contact. So that's the other side of living on your own, the isolation. You don't have that disadvantage in a family home. But what you do have is that there's a lot of overlap. So if you're going to the market to buy something, somebody else from the house would say, "Hey, get me this," or "I'll come with you." "Oh, why are you going now? Go later. Go with me. Don't go now." Blah blah blah. So your routine stops being your routine and it starts being spread across the whole family. Same goes to work. "What time are you coming home today?" Like my mum would say, or a spouse would say, or a brother would say, and he'd say, "6. Try to come early. We're thinking of doing X, Y, Z. And if you want to be part of it, come home early." And you say, "No, my work hours are till 6. No, it's just one day." So all those boundaries and lines that we intentionally draw to separate things out, particularly in Western societies, they're very blurred in other parts of the world. They're like, "No, well, yes, you're mixing things." And that's just how those societies function. And they thrive that way. I'm not saying to impose one model on the other. They thrive in that manner. It's a Western categorical imperative to come and draw lines and categorize. That's just how they function. But other cultures really don't, and they haven't ever. So in the family home, you have this danger. Also, you have the danger of walls being too thin. So if you are having a private conversation, somebody in the other room or downstairs or upstairs or wherever ends up hearing you. And then they talk to you about, "Hey, I heard you talking about this." And you said, "Why were you listening?" "Oh, I wasn't listening. I just heard it. And then I ended up listening. You should have been quieter." It happened to be quieter. I was in my room with the door closed and on the phone, and you still heard it. How is that my fault? Well, play some loud music. So that ends up happening. And I know for a lot of people that can be problematic. And for others, that could be exactly what they're looking for. It's all about how much privacy and alone time you are used to and you prefer. So it's different, and it's not stagnant. It's not monolithic. It could be, "Oh, I feel like engaging more in the mornings, and I feel more like requiring solitude at night," or vice versa, or it comes and goes. So people have all sorts of different rhythms. And in the family home, if you're living with multiple couples or people or children or relatives, for example, in Pakistan, it's very, very common for the house to have 5, 6 bedrooms, a large villa type house, typical of a middle class person, 4, 5 bedrooms at least, children running around, an unwed sister or unwed brother living in their own room, having their own life, grandparents living with you, uncles, aunts, cousins visiting, just staying over. That's our culture, and I wouldn't change it for all the money in the world because I celebrate it. There's no, "Oh, why don't you stay at a motel?" There's no, "Oh, why don't you go stay over there and we'll see you?" No, no, no. It's all in the family home. But imagine if you have visitors over and you and your spouse are having a tiff. It's just an argument. Millions and billions of spouses have arguments all the time. As old as time, husbands and wives are going to fight. So my mum never advocated for airing your dirty laundry outside. So she's always of the view that if some disagreement happens in a public place, both agree to, "Okay, we'll discuss this when we get home." And you drive, and even in the car, if you're both mad at each other and you're driving, and you don't need to speak, you don't need to be all nice, lovey-dovey. You're going to have a fight. You want to have a fight. This is a fight you're gearing for and you're ready. Fair enough. Perfectly fine. If you don't want to pacify or mollify the situation, perfectly fine. Get home, put the stuff where it needs to be put, for example, kitchen stuff, take your shoes, clothes, blah, 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 get into the bedroom, close the door, and once you've changed and stuff, they say, "Okay, so what's the problem?" And then you get into it. You can really go back and forth. If you want to raise voices, raise voices. If you want to express anger, express anger. Say it. But if somebody says Ali, or if somebody says your name, and you say, I'll be right back, and you go outside, yeah, what's up? Is everything okay? Yeah, yeah. Yep, everything's fine. Oh, can you call your wife, or let's call her Jane? Can you call Jane? Sure, Jane. Jane comes out and says, hi, hi, what's up? Everything okay? Yeah, yeah, everything's fine. Absolutely. Don't take this in the direction of oppression or silencing. It's consensual, agreed upon standard of maintaining a life. So if somebody's watching this and saying, oh, well, the spouse has been oppressed into not sharing, no, no, no. It's not their business. It's between these two people. Because if you blur that line, if you remove that line, then there is no line. Then you can't just say, well, I don't think you should be telling my employer what kind of a person I am when I argue. It's, well, there is no line. I don't think you should be telling my colleagues. I don't think you should be telling my friends. No, then the line disappears. So the line is clear, and it is an argument between spouses should remain between spouses. Only and only when there is absolutely no solution that you can find after calmly, patiently, peacefully talking over something, not arguing over something, talking over something for a large amount of time. And by that, I mean at least a month. And you can't find something, then you go to an outside counsel and you say, well, we haven't been able to agree on this topic for the last month, and we had a few fights, but we've discussed it calmly for a month. And now we need somebody who's impartial from the outside. So, or it could be two people, one from the spouse's side, one from your side, and then you kind of reach agreement. This is how it's laid out in Islam as well. So that's the way you should engage somebody outside. Otherwise, it's none of their business. And my mum would say this because her sons have been married. So she would say, look, I don't want to get involved. As long as you both have your own rhythm and you're happy with each other, that's it. I don't need to know what she does in the bed. I don't need to know what kind of a verbal or physical fighter she is. I don't need to know if she's messy or clean. I don't need to know any of that stuff. As long as you're happy and she's respectful to you and to us and she assimilates, we want nothing in return or no more information. As long as you're happy, that's it. If you are happy with that situation, cool. If I see something, I'll directly address the other person or you, and I'll say, well, this bothers me or not. Otherwise, I don't want to hear or see something. You go to the bedroom, you close the door, you fight like there's no tomorrow, but when you come outside, you maintain your composure, you maintain the status quo, you maintain the dignity of your partner and yourself, and you maintain pleasantries. Even if you're arguing about something that you've been arguing about for 3 days, you come out and say, yeah, yeah, everything's fine. Oh, how are you? Yeah, yeah. Shall we make tea? And you work as a team. What does that do? A is the dignity, respect argument. It protects the intimate, personal details from being expressed outside. I mean, it's in Islam. It says you have to be each other's garment. Now, garment isn't the appropriate term because the term we use is libas. So, garment isn't the appropriate term. Veil. But veil isn't the appropriate term. This is my problem with the English language. You don't really have a lot of words from other cultures, but fair enough. Neither do they have words from the English language. So, a libas is something that covers the naked. That's a libas. So, garment essentially that. But garment doesn't, the connotation doesn't communicate that it is protecting or veiling. And a veil, on the other hand, communicates that it's protecting, but maybe it's a bit too much. A libas keeps private that which needs to be kept private. I think that's the best way I could explain it. So be each other's libas. And in Islam, it also says, if you hide the actions or sins of your spouse, God will hide the sins and actions of you, your negative sins and actions on the day of judgment. So you're not supposed to express private details in public and say, well, look, that person is this way and that way and has this misgiving and that misgiving, and I am such a saint for putting up with them. That's narcissistic, entitled, egotistical, requiring a pat on the back. Wow, you're such a magnificent saint. No, do none of that. Protect them. So one is the dignity, respect argument that it keeps intimate. But the other, and this is what my mum explained later as we grew older, it puts the husband and wife on the same team. So even if you are quarreling with your teammate, essentially, it reinforces the idea that you're on the same team. So privately, you're saying, well, you're this and I'm that, blah, blah, blah. You're having a whole Donnybrook. And then you come outside and you say, so where did you guys go last week? Oh, yeah, we went for a lovely visit to a lake or a waterfall and blah, blah, blah. And both spouses know that, wait, I wasn't really pleasant with this person just 10 minutes ago. But now we're happily sharing a story in front of other people, because why is it their business? It's us against them almost. And against doesn't have to mean negative, ontologically negative. Against means there's a line. There's a line, and this is our unit, and this is their unit. So in that line, you don't even include your parents or children. With all due respect to parents and children, I've said this unabashedly and repeatedly. For me, my parents are the most important people in the world. No spouse or sibling or friend or employer or prime minister or Nobel laureate comes even close. So I'm not making the argument in terms of importance. I'm making the argument in terms of involvement. So the line or us against them is not antagonistic, it's simply delineation. So you say, well, this is between me and my spouse, and this is where it will stay. With everyone else, we're fine. And then when you go back into the room for the second time, the argument more often than not has lessened, but provided that you do this pretense, this act, this demonstration consensually and with full agreement. You have to both agree upon it. It can't be that one person's secretly mad and they're just playing along and rolling that and being all passive aggressive and negative. No. Both mature adults have come to the agreement that, look, our arguments are our business, nobody else's. So we're not going to involve them in our personal business. When there's somebody else around or if they're in earshot, we're not going to argue. We'll argue when it's our private time, or we'll go on a long drive, sit on a bench and argue, or we'll argue in the car when I'm not driving or something. And we can resolve our disagreements in this manner. But we're not going to have a big, oh, let's argue in the living room. And I'm sorry to say I've seen many situations outside of our culture, in England in particular, where I've seen arguments break out in the living room with guests present. And that has a multitude of negative side effects. One major one was we stopped going to that friend's house. We just wouldn't go, like, those guys are always arguing. I'm going there just to have dinner, maybe a drink, a cup of tea or something. And every time we go, you're having that argument. Nah, I'm good. I'm good, man. Thanks. Yeah, I'll just see you some other time. I'll see you some other time, lady. No. So that was just one side of it, but there's many others. Like we wouldn't respect them individually and together as we would have had we not seen that. So it has a lot of negative social and psychosocial side effects. So the advice that my mum's always given me in that regard is to leave it in the bedroom. For example, you do bathroom stuff in the bathroom. You don't do bathroom stuff in the living room, and vice versa, right? So don't blur that boundary. Similarly, bedroom stuff, you don't do it out in the public. And by bedroom stuff, I mean intimate stuff with your partner. You don't do it out in the public with so many other people, right? Maybe there's some people who are big on PDA, but more often than not, we're not. And particularly as Muslims, we're not into PDA. So there's a domain of privacy and respect that you have with each other. Maintain that when you're having an argument, a quarrel, a dispute, a disagreement, a fight. When you're having all of that, keep it in the bedroom. When you come outside, be all pleasant. And you extrapolate this perspective and apply it to brothers and outside the home, and it's the same story. Argue with your brothers and fight with them and punch with them and break their nose and pull their hair. Cool. But when you're outside the house, you and your brothers are like this. There's nothing that comes between you. Protect them at all costs and defend them at all costs, at the expense of friendships, at the expense of relationships and partnerships, whatever. Defend and protect your brother as best as you can. But when you get home or even in the car, rip them a new one. So that was the mentality of family first. And here, spouse before everyone else in terms of maintaining their dignity, their privacy, their respect. And you can call them all the names in the book privately, but in public you're respectful and you're giving and magnanimous. And this isn't gendered. It applies to both genders. But the advice was for all boys, because we're all boys. So she would say, be chivalrous and be kind and be caring and look after her. So this is what she would tell us all the time. So fight in the bedroom, not out in the open, has been lesson number 52. And I thank my mother for this incredible wisdom, because we've all benefited from it. And thank God for her, and God bless her, and love her to bits. So thank you so much for joining me again on another Monday. I shall take your leave and I shall see you next week.